Hello and welcome back to the channel and the second in our Good to Great series, and we're going to look at Glen Ellyn GC by jcollick. Now Collick actually got to the semi-finals last year's World Cup, so a pretty good designer already, but he's reaching out to get a little bit more, and this course was not the World Cup course, that was Escondite, which did really well. We're going to have a little look through play. I know I've played this one in the previous game, but I think he said he's softened some things, and look through and see what we got in terms of potentially making a good course even better. But yeah, so Kotick has done a couple of courses so far, but I don't think as many as maybe others. Came out, I want to say, rookie a few years ago, and then really did well with World Cup. Now, this one, so it's potentially just finding that consistency, I guess. Like, we know that some courses can be really, really good, and some courses maybe less so. So, have a little fly around and see what we've got. I remember this one for the skyline in particular, and it's that, like, it was, I believe, Chicago in, I want to say, in National Treasure last year, and we've got a sort of Rainer kind of look. I think not exactly. There's a few things that might change. You've got the squared off fairways and angles and things, um, constrained in this kind of square plot, and you can see all of the grass work and like the cool texturing you've got, and then you've got that skyline in the distance. So it's a fun one to look up. Now, if it's templates, we can offer lots of thoughts on those in terms of how they work together and how the greens work, etc. And that certainly, first thing for anyone watching, templates does not mean geometric. This kind of squared off, very straight lined fairways, that's nothing to do with templates. It happens to be done by Rainer, who is a protege of McDonald. It's not done by McDonald, so NGLA template course doesn't look like this. Although it does have some aspects of straightened edges. But yeah, the templates is like the philosophy behind the whole, not how the whole looks. So yeah, I have played this one before, but it was a little while ago. So I remember enjoying it. I also remember the greens being very fierce. So I'm interested to see how those look in this game. As you can see, the grass work is pretty awesome. And that seems to have ported really quite nicely. Obviously, we muted the lighting, I want to say, a little bit further with this one than what we had done. And we've got a cool clubhouse in the back. So I'm going to zoom back to the first tee and we'll get underway. And looking forward to this. I'm not going to, we'll try and template guess a little bit. So first one, you can see we've got this kind of triangular green with a big false front, which essentially does kind of make it just a square green. So I guess I'd question whether you need the false front. Another thing that we've looked at on greens videos before is like the edge of this. Part of that is the green grid. It's always going to be red here. There's nothing you can do that's ever going to make this green because it's going off the edge of a square. It's a new square, and like obviously this part of the square is going to be lower. It's always going to look like a red slope. But parts of this we can solve. Could be a little bit neater with like some of the technical stuff. So transitions there as well we can see. But in terms of the green itself, I again got a little bit of a, it's falling off a touch at the back. I'd probably try and neaten this so that that red slope is right up against the edge. I'm not sure whether we need the false front. For me, I don't really understand what that's giving us, that just having the green be there wouldn't. Yeah, not so sure. Could be a narrows for hole one. Would make sense. So it's basically, do you want to hit driver into this choke point, or do you want to lay back and leave a longer approach? I think for this one, it's got to be kind of a bit of a partial driver. We're not clearing it. Green itself is pretty benign. That's good. I do love the look of how he's done the fields and things, and like the grass. There's a lot of space to play into on the fairway, so that's good. So it's clearly back to front, which we would expect. There's a little bit of right to left at this point as well. I think the pin placement's pretty good. I don't tend to love pins that are just the other side of the breaking slope, but I think this one, like the breaks are subtle enough that I think it's we're a little bit into the wind, we're a little bit uphill, and that bunker's kind of masking our sight line. We could flatten out this land just a touch more. You can see how it's kind of flat where the bunker is, up there, and then it's dipping down to where we are. And if we can make that a bit more gradual, it would just be a touch neater, and it would give you a slightly better sideline. But real nitpicks there. I really like the tree line and the colour of the grass as well. That's a bad swing. Get away with it. And the colour of the grass and the heavy rough contrasts really nicely with the greens, and the texture work is really good. And it just means that where there are the golf holes, they really stand out against the rest of the planting that you've done. Not much to critique so far. There we go. Didn't really look at the bunkers, but they looked pretty good for flat bottom bunkers. I'd be impressed if we got them perfectly flat, because they're really tough to do. Yeah, we haven't quite. I mean, that's something you can tidy up, but it's a lot of effort for minimal gain. Like if you're looking at the elevation change, we've got 2 feet there, 2 feet there, and it's all really just about raises in the middle and around the edges, and they're tough. I think where you've got them to is good enough, I would say. And we've got a Biarritz. Of course, we've got a Biarritz. And a good pin for it. There's a little swale in front. We've got to run it up there. And if we go too far, wonder whether this slope, I feel, is going to, if we go up here, that's just going to roll us all the way back down into the swale, I feel. Whereas on this side, we've got a bit more latitude. I say roll it through the swale, but if I land it there with a 5-iron, I'm probably not getting through. This is the tricky thing with Biarritzes in this game, because you're hitting a 4-iron, and really this is just acting as a false front. We can't really run it through this because we're not hitting a long enough club. So I don't think it's necessarily going to work. It's a defense rather than the aspects of the Biarritz I like. Missing it is the fun of rolling it through, which you only really get with a wood. And it's not the best shot. And we've left ourselves a really bad shot. Still. These slopes should bring it towards. I feel like you can use the slopes that are on the greens to kind of work the ball a bit closer. In terms of other pin positions, the big green. I'm assuming we've got one back here somewhere, probably around about there. It's tight, but I think it works. We've got one on top of this mound. That's potentially treacherous. One here and then one where we are. Or we might have one in the centre. I'd rather have one here than I would up here. But it depends where you put it. Awesome view of the skyline. Maybe gone a tiny bit dark. Huh. Gonna guess at 11, but I'm really not sure for the templates. So 11 would be there's a diagonal hazard and there's a bit of mounding in front of the green that creeps into the green and makes it blind. Yeah, I think this is it because of the mound here. So kind of the further we go this way, the better of an angle we've got at this pin. Makes sense. However, I think with this one we can just blow it over. Miss the trouble. Get the best of both worlds. I'd probably want that drive to be challenged a little bit more, but it is tough. It leaves a pitch, but it's a pretty relatively trivial pitch. Small green, and I'm not sure we need the false front. I'd be really wary of doing false fronts where I guess they just happen to be there, and this slope I would lose because it's only ever rolling you off into the rough, never pushing you into the bunker. So definitely be raising that up, and therefore if you do miss the bunker, it's just a trickier shot as well. And not want the slow. Hopefully it hits the little slope that's there and at least feeds down. Not a great shot. I mean, the environment of this course is really good. So that, and I'm kind of expecting that with these courses. Like the environments, the designers in this sort of tier is not going to be generally the issue. Like planting to a good level is relatively easy to learn, and most people, if you look at a hole long enough, you can work out how to frame it pretty well. Love the paths through the grass, and actually done some really good sculpting work to make the one thing that people won't realise until they do it is really hard to make these visible from the tee. You're doing a good job of that. There's a little fall off down to this side, so doesn't make. Guess we're just on a long, aren't we? Yeah, long par 5. And you can tell because that second shot layup zone is really well protected. It's going to make us think about what we do on our second. What you want. The greens are interesting. They're not Rainer in terms of the slopes that are on them. I like, yeah, making up my mind on them. There's lots I like. There's a few things I might change, but often that might be personal preference. Okay, so we challenge that bunker. And now we've got to work out where we want to go. We kind of want to use that as a backstop if we possibly can, although it's tiny as a backstop. I guess that encourages us to lay up over here. Or we can try and thread the needle and go down to there. Much better. I mean, you can tell it's a good hole because it's made me think. Probably. I don't want to leave myself in that sort of a range. I'd rather have a full wedge in. I think. 187, 3 or 4 left. That's probably going to leave full wedge. Hopefully we'll lay up just short. Stop. Thank you. A little close for comfort. Ah, we're a bit more than the full wedge. Okay. Yeah, gone too far. Really like this hole though. I think this is the best of the 3 so far. Best of 4 even. But the previous hole, the tee shot was a little bit too facile on the green. Me just didn't. I don't know. Felt a little small. I really like that second shot. Okay, principal nose would make me think double plateau. Double plateau it is. Not sure how much I love the pin and it's on right on that light green slope. I think I'd probably be trying to pull this slope just back to here so it feeds it down and then it's flatter around the hole. That back tier is teeny tiny on a 450 odd yard hole. So principal's nose is going to make it blind, but also it's going to stop us hitting driver. Let's go down this way. I want to open up the green a little bit more. I guess the light green is, oh well, we're going to go in the bunkers. The light green is light rough, so it's not the end of the world if we end up in one of those. I also really like that you see a lot of different holes on here. It's like it is pure golf in terms of you're just seeing golf holes and stuff in between. It's not really trying to crutch on visuals, but doing the visuals really well by just being everything's just part of the whole. Pretty good. Until you fought the sculpting just a little bit because you're getting the kind of crinkly edges on the top of that green. It's just an unfortunate byproduct. Ah. I think the grass renders really well as well, which is good effort because it's not easy to see. Okay, 6. I guess this is the sort of bunker you can't make visible from the tee. Oh, this is a no. An interesting choice for a dry ball 4, because a dry ball 4 I feel you want to allow a bit of run up zone, and yet the no is very much pure aerial approach, and we don't aerial approach with drivers interest. Yeah, I think you can still do the no without doing the runoffs on all sides. Like how you've got it here, where it's just green slopes is perfect. It's the red feeding off into the rough that I love. Do we go for it? If you don't go for it, where do you go? I like this little tier it's on. I'd probably just try to create a bit more flat space on top of the tier by just a little raised brush around the top here, just to keep the bottom slope where it is, but just make it a bit steeper and a bit shorter. Just might make it a little bit neater. And like just creating a bit more playable surface really with the same effects. Huh. Somewhere around there. Wind. And if we end up short, we end up short, and that's fine. It's an interesting hole. It feels maybe a little bit, I don't know. Perhaps this bunker extends a bit more. Maybe I'd want some bunkering one side of the green, so like bunkers one side, rough the other, but I think that would necessarily make the hole better. I kind of query what purpose this bit of fairway is serving, but equally, if you surrounded the green with fairway, it would play easier and encourage more people to go for it. No, I think I like it. It's just different. Another really solid hole. Can't part. Hey, 3, 4, 3. Just the one par 5 on this 9 is interesting. Okay, so next up we have what I'm assuming is a short purely by yardage. Good site for it. Love the bunkering around the green. Really treacherous little green that you've just got to hit the right spot for. I mean, same comments with the red slopes on the edge of the green. We'll stop making those now. I think that's partly a technical thing, and some of this is like either by decision or just couldn't figure out another way of doing it. It can be tricky. We've got the fun pin right in the middle, because if you miss this anywhere else, you've got a nasty little putt down towards this pin. Yeah, really good hole. This one's very much modelled on the Chicago one, I think. I remember riffing on this on Apollo River, I think. Anyway, the one where I did one of these. Really love this one because it's got that front little left tongue. And we've missed the green in the bunker. And it was always going to be an awkward short bunker shot, which I'm not very good at. Shame. The only thing I might say about this hole is we've just had a long followed by drive ball 4 followed by short 3. So I guess, actually no, we're testing short iron after probably not testing that. I was wondering whether you might put a mid-length hole, but if you put that here, okay, so this one must be prize dog learner's cape. We've got the green extending into the bunkers with the kind of diagonal carry. Don't have much to say here. This is really well designed. Just simple and effective. I feel like you've toned the greens down with this version. I could be wrong. I'm wondering where this one finished in National Treasure, because I can't feel it would be that far off the very top ones. There's like a few things that I would pick up on, but not much. And the tricky thing with template courses, we've seen so many of them, it's like you almost feel you have to put a spin on a template or make it like an absolutely outstanding version for it to be really world beating. And that will probably be the only thing that, another crapper, that'd probably be the only thing that's holding this back is like when you go to the end of the 9, how many of the holes am I remembering perfectly based on everything, or like remembering vividly for the shots that I played? They're all really competent and well made. I will remember the short, the null, that drive ball hole, the long, and the 4 before that less so. I know there was one with the principal's nose. We had the opener, which was narrows. Openers are tough. This is an interesting one because this one I feel like it's an original. Certainly not a template as I know of them. It's got a really good setting. I love a 9th hole par 3. The mounding I think is really cool. Adds to it. The other thing that's working against you is it's all very flat. And like that is what the land is around here. But I wonder whether we could have used some of these mounds a little bit more and brought them into greens. Because even when we had our 11, it was a very subtle mound, whereas this is a bit bigger. We're looking at 8 feet or so. Yeah. 9 feet, 10 feet. Oh, 10 feet. I think that would help as well, because it's quite hard to do flat courses. Awesome, awesome view. This is a great golf hole. I might like the green itself just popped up a tiny bit more above that planting. I think it was probably perfect height before you put the planting in, and then after the planting's in, maybe just take your circle brush around all of this 2 feet, and I think you'd get a much better look. That said, it's an awesome looking golf hole, and I think I might have hit a good shot. Yeah, not too bad. Kind of got an element of a punch bowl to this back pin, like. Yeah, I really like this green. It's segmented, but like the use of these little slopes plays really well in this game, because you saw how that one worked its way down. And it's not necessarily hitting big slopes, it's just the little ones. It's come off this at touch at the end. But it's the impact those little slopes have that make it really work. I'd say this is a good mixture of like big slopes and little slopes on a green. If you're looking to bottle it, that'd be the one. Too many things to say. Okay, now we've gotten a little bit more funky with the bunkering. And I think, I want to say, I'm going to zoom out again. I want to say this is a bit different to what we've had previously. We've had sinuous shapes, which are more straight, sinuous, one little bunker. Whereas now we're dotting a couple more in, and it just looks a little bit more artful, this hole, compared to some of the others. I think that's a real benefit visually. I do not know what the template is. Nope. Green's not giving me any clues. It's just mounds and stuff in it. Okay, well, I think I probably just want to take it over this side, really. Really good look at that skyline again, which has just been, like, for all that the course itself is flat and, like, the planting is, saying it's single tone is both fair and also doing it a disservice. It is single tone in that it's all, like, there's no major spots necessarily, but it's really believable. It's got a great vibe. So I'm saying that as a very much positive, but that skyline therefore adds something a little bit different. It's not the best pitch I'll ever hit. Ah. Thought I'd miss that too. So I guess we're going back to the title of this, like good to great. I kind of feel this is already it's pretty much on the cusp of great as is. This is your road hole. We've definitely got our big carry to this side. We don't have OB, but that's fine. Trees kind of functioning as the road element. Whereas if you play out here, you've got a really difficult long shot over there. And as a par 4, I like the size of green, because the one at the old course is very narrow and very skinny, and it would mean that if you bailed out over here, you've got literally no shot. And as soon as you've increased the size of the bunker, I think you have to increase the size of the green accordingly. You've also given us a helping slope to get around it, which I like, to this pin. I'm kind of half take on the carry. I think you've done the angles on this course generally really well. So I could have been braver and gone even further left, and I'd get an even better look at the green. But this green site sits beautifully. Like those two bunkers, this one doesn't really come into play other than framing, but looks so good. And Just that little visual impact of it looking like it's right in front of the green when it actually isn't. Like, we saw that on the previous course. Like that's awesome. Oh, I did not want to slow. Please get over. Yeah, okay. It's a shame that in this game you still do just get a 9-iron, basically, because the distances are so warped sometimes. But it was kind of downwind. Again, that planting looks really good. I might be tempted to have a couple of little highlight spots of flowers, particularly on something like this where it's all grass. That could be cool. Eden? Oh no. Maybe. Yeah, I think it's an Eden. Interesting shape of one. Basically be below the hole. That is a dicey pin. Definitely an Eden. Stay below the hole at all costs. And ideally stay below the hole here so you've got an uphill putt. Which means challenging this bunker more. The back bunker is treacherous. Sculpting on this back bunker looks great, by the way. You haven't got the flat pan, but the walls look awesome. Really good look over the rest of the course, and that's a horrible shot. Straight in Strath. Okay. That makes this a nasty little shot as well. Yeah. Maybe that pin needed a little bit more softening. And I think you can probably get the same effect by just moving, lower this a touch, keep this all that light green colour, and you'll still see the ball. Like if you put the pin there, I think on an Eden is perfect. Like this sort of light green colour. If you're above the hole, that's a nasty putt that you're just going to have to tap. And that's really what we want, I think, with an Eden. You want that feeling of if you're above the hole, you are just having to barely touch it and hope that it stops. Like that's the real danger. Whereas if you're above the hole here, you've got, it doesn't really matter how little I hit it, it's going off the green. I'm never getting it to stop near that. I think you've kind of taken that away a little bit with this pin. Although pin 3, pin 2, I can't remember. Might be the little change up one. Oh, I said we had narrows earlier. I'm now questioning my decision. That is a hell of an arrows. I feel like we've gone a little too wide here. Just like this bunker looks almost kind of comically far left when we go all the way over here. I probably have cut it maybe there. But part of it I think is also because it's so very kind of perpendicular. It's constantly at that 288. You made it maybe a bit more diagonal, but then it's like, why would I hit over here rather than hitting? I guess there's 10 yards difference. I don't know, there's something a little off on this. I think it's that. Personally, would probably break it up with a couple of your smaller bunkers. I do think these bunker shapes are working a little less well than the sinuous ones and the little dots you had. And the bunkering could, like, it's been done really well. I don't think the shapes are necessarily helping you that much. This is hilariously narrow. I don't really know what the template is again. It could be a punch bowl, but I don't think it is. I'm going to go original. I'm not really sure. If you take something off the drive and just play it sort of into that neck. Could be a bottle, but that's not really my definition of bottle, that I don't really know. Nobody really, well, hard to know with bottle, seeing as the only book that has lots in it is very hard to get. There's a shot. Really like the green though. The false front here I think works really well because it's slowing up a ball that's going into it or making a pitch a little bit more tricky. And with a par 5 green like this, you can protect a little bit more. Missed again, haven't I? Still, 2 under, can't really complain. Really don't have much to critique on this course at all. Huh. Redan? No. I mean, it's got a big kicker at the back, but I'm not really sure what the template is on this one either. This one could be bottle, because it does kind of stop at that point, and then you've got a free rein on the less ideal. We'll probably go with that. Actually, for this pin, I think going down the right could be okay. Unless there's not really an element of hogsback. It's a little bit of right, left to right. Let's just bring it back a touch. In tiny little things like the sculpting here, you can notice you could maybe smooth this out and this out, just so it's more gradual. And you can do it a little bit neater, and part of that is often just being so, if you're being really worried about this being dead flat the whole way rather than this bunker being flat but going with the incline, that might be part of it. Okay, I think it's somewhere up there, really. That's not a great shot, but I think as I hedge my bets to the left, we're probably okay. I'm enjoying the greens, actually. I definitely feel like you've toned them down. I don't know what you mentioned in the message as to whether you did or not. Okay, this one feels a little out of place. Like, it's tough because we can't. Water as an end has this tough. Just feels a little harsh in how it's cutting off. Small green, false front. I'm not sure what the template is. I feel like we've gone away from them a touch. Or if this is, I mean, sort of a cape, but we've had that already. The clearer cape. Could be bottle. Very much could be bottle. We're going to light rough, that's not the end of the world. Oh, I think we just stayed. Beautiful. Okay, so that's as close as I can creep. Not unhappy with that. Right, okay. Let's look at how we might route this differently, because I think what you're doing is essentially forcing a layup, which I don't really like, because there's no option to go around this water. Things you could have done slightly differently. Could have put the fairway around this side, filled in a little bit of the water, which I feel like a McDonald would have done, or a Rainer would have done. Could we have pulled the tee back? Yeah, probably a little bit. I don't think that's really taking problem away. We could have put the tee a bit more over here and then angled further around. But then whatever you're doing is impacting the next hole we've got, which, by the way, looks like we're cutting off driver again. So maybe we're doing 2 in a row, which, again, I'd be wary of. I feel like there's not, that's one sort of thing where if there's a pond and it's like directly in the landing zone, you can't clear it. That to me is a bit of a red flag of just, I maybe should be rerouting a touch now. Because people will always get frustrated with that. But that is very much one where it could be a, yeah, but it's, and I guess it's adding a different challenge of just like, how close to the water do you go? Just, I don't know if it's maybe the best use of that hazard. Okay, next one. Oh no, we're not shaking off the fairway, they're purely for visual. That's all good. I feel like I'm going to look back at the scorecard. We're looking at the good to great, like great and top kind of closing positions of like a contest. You want to be able to look at scorecard midway through and go, oh yeah, I remember that hole, remember that hole, remember that hole, remember that hole. I feel like I'm now in a stretch where I'm not remembering them as clearly. The 5 was the par, 5 of the false front. The 3 was the even. Don't remember 11. Don't remember 10. And we've manipulated T's, which I like, by the way. Really remember 9. 9 was a great par 3. 6 was the null. Part of it's also going to be like the yardages make things leap out to you short. What do we have after that? Oh, I remember 11 was the road. That was good. 14, yeah. This one and the previous hole were a little bit weaker for me. And like when we get, so this is the maiden. When we get into these stages of contests, it's also, is every shot really challenging you or making you think or doing something a little bit different? They've got a tiny bit of a hop, no, just a mound really, and those little wings. It's a small green shape for a maiden, but then you're allowing us a ton of space off the tee, so that's not a bad thing, which we've missed. Naturally, missed in the worst place. Hit one of these chocolate drops. Now I've got an awful stance. It's a very segmented green. It's a very clear 4 positions. I'd probably like each area to have a little bit more to it, but it does give the hole a little bit of character. Just hoof it somewhere up and hope. One of the things I like about maidens is you can often do it where you get some slightly different angles to each of the pins. I'm not sure we necessarily got that here. A little bit. It's not whether you want to approach it straight on, but ultimately, like, I think it's hard to generate any different angle to this one than you would to this one, which might be something I'd be looking at. Ugh. This is a complete guesswork part. What I would have expected from that. Didn't deserve better. Definitely deserved bogey. Got away with it. Skyline's still just an absolute killer. Awesome, awesome stuff. Right, blow me away with 17 and 18. 17, Redan. It kind of is and it kind of isn't. In terms of how you're getting to this back pin, you're not necessarily hitting the kicker slope to get all the way down there, which is no, but that's no bad thing. And equally, we've seen so many one-dimensional like standard Redans now. We don't really need that many more of them. I might like to allow a little bit more fairway to this front pin so that you kind of say to people you've got more leeway if you aim over here, but you allow them to take that direct line if they really want to. Grass planting again is awesome. I love that you can just see this little green and this little green in the background. Like from the tee, just seeing that flag poking up. Where is it? Just over here. When you zoom in, really cool. That way. And then the one over there, obviously, we can see from here. Winds are getting up a little bit. I don't mind being short. I don't mind being right. I think for a front pin, I'd want to be encouraging people to run it on. Like the Redan again is like a running shot, and I think for when we look at the Redan, the Biarritz you've got, they're both par 3s that are supposed to be bounceable and watch it release when it lands. And granted, I haven't really got the wind for it on this one, but we're landing into an upslope, which is immediately taking a lot of the bite off the ball. And it's not really long enough for a front pin. So I think both of them have just kind of missed the mark a touch in terms of distance and actually what that template's really trying to do. They're not bad holes, neither of them, but just that, are they kind of providing that, I guess, all-round test of a golfer's game that a template course is meant to is trying to do with that long shot? Not sure. White ball. Okay. Oh, blinding sunlight on 18 is unfortunate. We've gone back to really super width. Have you got mow lines? I just haven't seen it until now. Because they're all so wide. That's entertaining. This one's just gone giant. I feel like sizing's gotten away from us a touch here. Yeah, the green's huge for the for the contours that are on it, and as par 5, I don't think you need it to be this receptive. It's a very open tee shot, and I think the weaker holes on here have been where you haven't, I don't know, where you haven't quite got the balance absolutely spot on sizing. I do like the spine in here because I can try and bounce it over and just release it down. I have to say I would like some fairway aprons somewhere. Because rolling straight off the green is heavy into light rough. Sorry, that's would be a little neater. I think it's a cool pin. It's just once you get past that pin, you are gone. Particularly with the approach length we've got. This kind of underwhelms as an 18th hole, I think. And again, if we're looking for that, like, oh, there we are. Like, what are we taking to push this course over to that next level? I think it's a really, really good course. What are we needing to do to push it to top 3 in any contest? I think it's those few weaker holes. Thought a couple of the par 3s really strong. 7, 9, 12, really strong. 17 and 2 a little bit weaker. So I was trying to look at the holes as a set of your par 5s. I thought 4 was awesome. I thought 13 is a bit borderline on the tee shot. I really like the approach. 18 is a bit of a miss for me. It's just a bit too wide. And if you then go to previous contest winning courses, like, do they necessarily have a weak par 3 or a weak par 5? Probably not. That's where we're looking to tighten up. And looking at those 3 as a set, what's the role of each of them? Well, the 4th, for example, is your long, where you're challenging the decision making, and you absolutely nailed that aspect of it. 13, the narrow tee shot, just it felt a tiny bit forced, but only because it went so wide to so narrow, and that's where I go back to the scaling thing that we just talked about on 18, because 18 was just really wide the whole way. And I'm not sure, with really big width, you can often get these really bold angle plays and things. If you look at how NGLA does it, there's a lot of bunkers and there's a lot of land movement, which is why it's so wide. When you've got a very flat course, you can't do as wide as much, and when you're not bunkering in the middle of the fairway, like on 18, you're not, then suddenly huge 100-yard wide fairways, they come off a little bit weirder. Again, we look at your 3s, like the ones that are, I'd say, could stand up in any contest against any set. 7 and 9 definitely. 12 solid, really good hole. 2 and 17 are kind of making up the numbers a little bit more. And I dare say if you hadn't done a template course, you wouldn't have included either of them, which is where it becomes a bit tricky doing a template course. Like, we've seen so many Biarritzes and so many Redans, and it's hard to make them better than what's come before. Whereas I thought your 7 and 9 were really, really strong. If we look at the par 4s, that's also where it comes down, like how good a set of par 4s can you make? 1, I don't remember off the top of my head, and I know I've forgotten this from playing it earlier in the round, and even mentioning them earlier in the round. I think 1 was a narrows, but I feel like we then had that with the par 5. So I wonder with some of these whether we're maybe nailing the identity as much if it's templates, or maybe it's not meant to be a whole template course. I don't know. I think there's enough of them. 3 was 11. Again, a tee shot I could kind of bomb it over, and the green felt a little bit small there. Sometimes it's, and when I'm saying small, I'm not saying don't vary sizes. It's maybe just the relationship between size and slope. I thought 3 had quite a lot of slope for a small green, whereas 18 had a really big green with quite little slope. It's that sort of distinction. And when 3 is a short par 4, whereas 18 is a mid-length par 5 that you're always reaching, that probably needs a smaller green with more slope. And 3, although it's a short 4, it's trying to find those 4 pin positions and like what are your, I'm wording this badly, it's late. 6, I remember the short, the Knoll green. 5, I remember liking, but I don't remember it now. 8, I don't recall. I remember disliking the one with the pond. That's 15. 16 was the maiden. Again, that's kind of like, it's like, where's your, with some of these holes, you had really killer ideas that are just great, and some of them are just, they're solid, and that would be the ones where I'd be looking at redrafting constantly until you get something that blows you away. And I think that's my real takeaway with this course. Like, there's some really, really good holes on here, and there's some that I think needed a couple more edits or passes. And if I think back to the contest courses I've had that have gone really, really deep, those are the ones where look at, I don't know, one that springs to mind is 8th hole on Straththorne, drivable sort of short par 4. That was draft 8. And like the previous ones weren't bad, but they weren't quite there. I think that's where I'd be pushing it. And that's not somewhere where I reckon you always need to go, because that can be a really brutal process to go through. Redrafting a hole that many times is not for everyone. But that'd be the sort of thing I'd be looking at. And then when you're doing that, it's like, well, what if the green side's here? Or what if I do it this way? Or what if I bunker this side? Or what if I move the land this way? Or what if I reroute these 3 holes so the whole thing's better? That kind of decision process. I think that's where you're at. Like, it's just that, how many things can we do differently so we get the perfect course rather than like a really, really good one. So in terms of the good to great thing, I think it's already on great. It's then you're pushing it even further, which is awesome, and we love to see it, and I really hope this has helped. So that's a fun 46 minutes. Really enjoyed it. Hope you did too, and see you again soon.